There's a lot of activity going on, actually. So must have been one of my students because it looks very much like what I was doing. Working on big projects and textures mostly. And I mean, I should change the rhythm. We change the way we make it. That was important to me. There's John Stevens.
Welcome back to Calligraphy Masters podcast. Today's guest is Yves Leterme, someone who does gestural calligraphy. This episode was recorded last year, and back then I was not familiar with gestural calligraphy. But after this podcast and my research and interest in it, I'm pretty into gestural calligraphy right now. And Yves is going to be sharing his story, how he started, who inspired him, and what he does actually right now. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Well, it's a French name actually, although I speak Dutch. I mean, the correct pronunciation would be Yves Leterme.
Yves Leterme.
But you could say whatever. I mean, I'm used to being.
No, I know, because it could be very annoying for some people to pronounce their name not correctly. I know as well. So you speak Dutch?
I speak Dutch, yes. I live in the northern part of Belgium that speaks Dutch. I'm from Flanders, actually.
Ik woonde 2 jaar in Den Haag.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, but
so we can have this conversation in Dutch then. No.
I don't think so. It's been a long time since I were there, but yeah. Yves, you're a very known calligrapher, a master to a lot of us. You do a lot of teaching. You have some amazing portfolio, but younger people like me and some other who are just starting with calligraphy probably don't know you. I myself, to be honest, I don't know much about you. I don't know much about a lot of huge names in calligraphy. That's why I make this podcast.
Okay. Yes. Well, yeah. I'm going to tell something about myself then. I'm 63 years old, and I live in Bruges. I'm very happy to live in Bruges, actually, not only because it's a very beautiful city to start with, but also it's almost, you could say it's the epicenter of Belgian calligraphy, and some would even say it's the epicenter of European calligraphy.
Really?
Because on a very small territory, let's say, I mean, it's a small city, but we have quite a good group of calligraphers working. I mean, first of all, this Brody Neunschwander, you may have heard of him, I hope.
Of course.
Yes. So he's been my teacher. And then there's the entire Bodens family also living in Bruges. Ah, you get a hand rhythmic pen, of course. Yes. Well, that's only one of the things that he's done in his life. And we got lots of classes going on here. We have a gallery that always shows some calligraphy. We have a ELI, the school. International School for Lettering is also situated here in Bruges.
Wow.
There's a lot of activity going on, actually. So I'm very happy that I can be part of that and just contribute to my whatever it is that I do. So I couldn't possibly think of a better place to live than in Bruges, actually.
You're not born in Bruges. You're just living.
I was not born in Bruges. I was born in Ypres. I mean, the English will know this as Wipers. And that is, there was a city actually, not that far away from here, let's say 30 miles away from here. But it was known in the First World War because it played a very important role in the First World War. It got totally bombed and yeah, I mean, it's a sad thing, of course, but that's why we were famous, because the people in Ypres had a lot to endure in the First World War. It was wiped up from the face of the earth, actually, totally.
Wow.
I mean, I was... So I didn't plan to become a calligrapher, actually. So I was until a couple of years ago, a teacher of Latin and Greek. And I was appointed a teacher in Bruges. There was hardly any calligraphy at the time then. That was in, well, let's say, that's about 35 years ago now, I think. And then I only started doing calligraphy as a hobby when I was 30. And then I immediately fell into very capable hands. I took classes with Brody Neunschwander. And as I said, there was a sort of revival of calligraphy in Bruges at the time. And I just jumped on that train. And so I remember when I started doing that I came home one evening and I said, this is really a good hobby for me. This is exactly the thing that I was looking for. And I was very enthusiastic. I just practiced and practiced. I mean, almost day and night, whenever I had a spare moment. And I took a lot of lessons with Brody Neuschwander. I mean, all sorts of things that I was not even ready for, but I just went there and looked and marveled at everything he did. And then I remember was after 2 or 3 years, he said, they asked me to teach somewhere in Bruges, and he said, I won't do that, but maybe you're interested to do that. And so I did. And as you may know, teaching is the best way to learn something, right?
Yes, I've heard this already.
Yeah, so I just started teaching and really tried to understand what I was saying. And then a couple of years later, that same Brody said to friends he had in Chicago, he said, oh, you should invite him, because at the time I was doing some gestural calligraphy. I mean, you're probably not familiar with my work, as you say, but
of course I am. I am
you know,
familiar with your work. I just don't know your story, you know. I don't know your background.
Okay.
Of course I am familiar with your work. How would I invite you to the podcast otherwise?
Oh, okay. I mean, you just said like I hardly know you, but okay. Well, you're familiar with my work, but you know that I do a lot of what I would call gestural writing. That sort of very modern-looking thing, and that was something that I was really addicted to already from the very start that I saw that. I don't know whether you've heard of Elmo van Slingerland.
Yes.
He's known by Lettertetter in Instagram. And I remember when I started doing calligraphy when I was 30 or something. And he is younger than I am. And he just went one day and stood in front of our class and he showed us his gestural writing. I mean, it was called different then. It's called informal italic or something. And I was just blown away. I said, oh my God, this is what I want to do. And I came home and I said to my wife, I said, this is what I want to do. I mean, they can cut off my left arm if I can do that with my right arm, whatever it takes. I really went for that. And, but of course, you know, you have to go through all the episodes of formal writing and drawn letters. There's a lot of drawn letters in Bruges, by the way, because we have a few very good letter carvers, the Bodens family, Peter Bodens, Christopher Bodens, and their sisters, they all do a lot of drawn letters. Mm-hmm. And so I was hooked to that, and I was hooked to on gestural writing. Not that much formal writing though. I mean, I did my share and I learned some basic scripts, but it never caught my attention that much. I really wanted to make my own letters. Yeah, so as I said, Brody introduced me to a group of people from Chicago, and that was in 2015 or 16, 2005 or 6, I guess. So that's 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. And from then on, by word of mouth of what the expression is, people started inviting me, and so I went a bit around, and so I made myself a reputation.
I'm just curious, in the very beginning, you told me you started around 30. Do you remember how exactly you were introduced to calligraphy and what made you fall in love with it? Like, was it specific calligrapher? Was it specific script or something you saw somewhere? What's the story?
Well, that's an interesting story. I've always been jealous, say, of people with a very beautiful handwriting, because I didn't have that. And I was just a mess when I was at university, and I had to take notes down from the professor or so. I mean, I couldn't even read my own handwriting. So nobody asked me for my notes. And so when I stood in front of my class, I was always embarrassed for my pupils. I said, I'm sorry, but this is the best I can do. And so I said, I got to do something about it. And there was a lady at the school I was in, and she said, oh, you know, I'm doing some calligraphy, you may be interested, and we're having this and this one over. And I said, okay, well, I'll give it a try. And actually the first teacher I had was the future wife of Brody Neuschwander. She was a Bruges, and she taught me my first italic things. And I remember that when I looked at that and I said, oh my God, this is really done by hand. Because I read some books and I said, okay, yeah, well, they're probably doing it with a computer or anything. And then I saw it actually live happening before my very eyes. And I said, oh, this is possible after all. And then she introduced us to Brody. She said, I'm going to show you my future husband. And then he showed me his work, or us his work. Oh my God, I mean, you've seen the work of Brody. It was already spectacular way back then, and it keeps on being spectacular. So I fell in love with about everything on it. I fell in love with the way, with how you can put interesting and nice, beautiful text, make them even more lovely to look at. Because you should remember, I'm a philologist. I teach Latin and Greek, so I have an interest in language, and I was trained to discover beauty in texts. So that was really a huge thing for me. And also I fell immediately in love with all the, well, let's say with the modern side of calligraphy. I mean, the gestural writing, the things with backgrounds, beautiful backgrounds, the work of Thomas Ingmeier, that's another name. Huge name in calligraphy. So, I mean, I was exposed to that and I said, oh my God, I had no idea. You know, people sometimes think at the start of their career that you're only going to write in beautiful Gothic letters, carpe diem or anything like that. But it was so much more than that. And there was an entire world for me opening up. Unfortunately, it didn't help me with my handwriting. So I still have awful handwriting. I mean, actually, it got even worse.
I think this is an issue that a lot of calligraphers are having, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
and it's so shameful, isn't it?
You know, like you practice calligraphy, you improve it, you become good in calligraphy, but I think it goes the same for handwriting. If you want to have a good handwriting, you have to be practicing it as well.
I know, and I've had some beautiful handwritings in front of me by David Michelberg, for instance. I got a handwritten letter in front of me and I said, if only I could write like that. And I did it for 2 or 3 days. I said, oh, well, I'm 60 years old. I mean, I can't possibly change my handwriting anymore. But if I make an effort, I could do it. But you cannot really make an effort when you're in school and you're on the blackboard, you know, and you have your back to the students. You cannot really do this. Then we just walk out. But I remember that. So for a long time, I did both things. So I was teaching at school, Latin and Greek, and then in the evening I taught calligraphy, or I did calligraphy, I did commissions and all that. And I was becoming so hard that I said, I can't do the two things properly. It's either teaching at school or calligraphy, because it was demanding too much attention, both of those.
And how long time was this after you started calligraphy?
Well, you know, I started teaching in 93 or 4 or so, I think, my first lesson. And then for a long time, I reduced my lessons at school. So I didn't have full time, but only part-time at school. And then half-time also calligraphy. But even that, I felt that I couldn't really jump the way I would like to jump in calligraphy, because there were some people, some guild and association asking me if I could come and teach for them. And I said, no, unfortunately not, because I'm at school. I can only do that in the holidays or in the weekend or whatever. And so I said, you know, I'm just going to give myself a sabbatical, just 1 year away from school.
Okay.
And that sabbatical, that was like heaven. God, yeah. And I worked like hell. I wrote a book. I had a big exhibition. I made pieces. I taught workshops and everything. And I said to my wife, look, I mean, what I earn is about the same amount as if I would go to school. So how about becoming a full-time calligrapher? And she said, okay, give it a go. So I gave it a go and it worked fine. So, and that was what, 12 years ago now?
Okay.
So since then I've become a, wow.
This is like 18 years after you started, you decided to become fully work?
Yeah,
Like,
something like that. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, and that was in a way, I would say this was very lucky for me that I could develop my style and without the urge or the pressure to really make it, to make a living. I mean, because I got kids and everything, and I had to pay for a lot of things. So I mean, there must be, I have to make an income. It's not like, oh, I can do whatever I want, you know, I got plenty of money, you know. But I could do so when I was still teaching at school. So I had my income from school, and then so I didn't have to make quick money, let's say. I don't know if I'm explaining myself right. So I could really, you know, it takes time to become
yes, yes.
a good calligrapher or to become good at what you're doing. So, and I had full opportunity to do that. And again, I was lucky to have very good teachers from the start. So
Yeah, you mentioned earlier Brody and Thomas. Are there some other names you can mention that?
I was influenced by a lot of people. Well, most of all Brody, of course, because he lives so nearby, and you know, we're friends, and I get to see his work almost every day if I want to. Thomas Ingmeyer, I met him a couple of times, but I was familiar with his work, and I said, oh, this is really nice. Other names, well, there was the late George Deaver, there's Gottfried Pott from Germany. Oh, well, I will remember some, I will forget some very important names, I'm sure. But there's also the Bodens family who lived in Bruges, who also had a huge impact on what I was doing. And several other people that I was happy to meet after a while and take lessons from them. And also people I just read or saw their work. I mean, nowadays it's totally changed. You know, you go to Instagram and you can connect with about 1,000 calligraphers and just admire them from a distance. But in those days, you know, I mean, these were my heroes when I finally got to meet these people. John Stevens, of course, John Stevens. How can I forget John Stevens? Oh God, sorry, John. Of course, he has a tremendous influence on me. I mean, he is God, right?
John is amazing.
Yeah, he is.
Well,
So,
don't give your pressures about names. I mean, if some names pop up while we're talking, would be cool to share, because you know, like for me, it's very interesting because first we're different age, and second, it's always good to know what people influence certain calligraphers. You know,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think for me it makes a lot of sense to when I follow some calligrapher, I see his work, I admire it, but I'm like, okay, who influenced this person? Because for example, I have the people that influenced me, but I guess everybody else has their own.
Yeah. And you notice there's also another thing, you know, some people only influence you during a certain amount of time, you know, when you're into something and you said like, well, this is really interesting to see that. And I was influenced also by Elmo van Slingerland. I already mentioned his name, Julian Waters, of course, and Heckel. But yeah, when it came to drawn letters and yeah, some refinements. Yuki Anand also is a very famous name that Karl Rohrs, of course, also. Some things, of course, in calligraphy that I stay away from, that don't interest me that much.
Like what?
Well, I'm not really interested in, but although I like to see it though, but it's just not for me. It's a sort of very feminine Spencerian and copperplate things. You know, I can appreciate and I can see the skill and everything, but it's just not for my hand. You know, my hand just wants to go faster and fly, and somehow it doesn't work for me. It's frustrating, you know. But every now and then I get an envelope job, as they say, and then I'm just thinking like, oh, these people probably want to see some copperplate-ish thing on their envelopes, and what they get is gestural writing, and yeah, well, you can't do it. You can't do everything. You know, you have to make choices. Also, another thing is you know, miniatures and the sort of style imitating of the 14th, 15th century things with filigrees and all that. I tried. I don't think I have the patience for it, nor the skill. Although I think, I mean, if you put your mind to it, you could reach a decent level also.
Well, I feel like 100% like you. Like I admire copper plates, Spencerian, and scripts like this, but I'm like, this is really not me. I mean, that's why we have Paul Antonio. I love watching him, watching his work, but if I have to do this, I'm like,
no, it doesn't work for me, you know. And there's also another thing that I said, you know, as you grow older, you said, how many years would it take for me to get good at this, right? Shall I put my time in that? And if I get reasonable, I would only be reasonable in something that a lot of people are much better at. So what's the point? Try to think like, maybe I should just focus on the things I think I'm good at and try to develop these further. And for a long time, I had that idea that a calligrapher, I mean, especially influenced by Brody, who can do anything, right? He can do that. And so I was brought up to believe that a calligrapher should be able to do anything. I mean, from copper plate to tracing capitals and back and turn and beautiful backgrounds and all the sort of things that Brody is doing actually. Just not working for me. I mean, I have to stay true to what I'm good at and what interests me. So I forced things a bit in the past. I did try Spencerian. I did try to do some other things, and then I just gave up on it. I said, like, well.
I guess it's important to realize that first of all, we're not supposed to do everything, and second of all, it's important to do the things that you love, that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It took me a long time to realize that. I still have that stupid idea in the back of my mind that I would one day make a work and put it on Facebook or whatever, and people would say, "Did he do that? Oh my God, I wouldn't have guessed, not in a million years." And I would say, yes. But unfortunately, no. I mean, people always recognize my style, and as I recognize other people's styles, you know, even though Brody is so versatile, I can recognize his work. There's always something that betrays Brody. You can recognize John Stevens' work. I mean, he has such a wide scope of things he can do, but you know, that must be John.
Yes.
Or at least one of his followers. Same with Dennis, same with Carl Rohr, same with anybody. So, and I said, wouldn't it be nice to be different and to have a sort of, you know, sort of like the ideal forger, one who can just make anything. But it's not working that way. So I'm getting to terms with this now. So I just do the things that I love doing.
Okay, you mentioned like copper plate and Spencerian are not really your thinking calligraphy. Apart from gestural calligraphy, which I want to speak about in a bit, are there certain parts of calligraphy which you're not doing, or maybe not as much, but you still love? I mean, you like a lot, you've done them. Some other scripts or specific styles in calligraphy or lettering?
Well, there's drawn lettering, which I like to do very much, and which I'm also teaching in an online course. There's an online course that I teach. There's a lot of people doing that now also, especially here in Bruges. I mean, I've been teaching all around, so of course people pick things up and they do that. And it's well loved in calligraphy circles, and it's really well done also by a lot of them. So I sort of gave up. It's like a child that I said, okay, well, I put it there and you've taken it and now you take it further and okay. And I have the idea like whatever I do with drawn letters, I can't reach the level of the people that I taught drawn lettering, because they've gotten better than I did, or they just spent more time on it, or they're more inventive than I am. And I said, well, that's good. Okay, let's focus on the things that I think that I can do pretty well, which is basically gestural writing with all sorts of things, and also the mixture of, how would I say, abstract painting with gestural writing, which is something that I love doing. Recently, also, I discovered Procreate, and that is something which is maybe in your world, but in the traditional world of calligraphy, it's
You would be
hard.
surprised. Actually, I'm not a fan of Procreate calligraphy.
No?
Because I mean I've tried it. I know a lot of people which are doing it and stuff. What I don't like about Procreate calligraphy is you don't really have to have some skills, you know. It makes the shapes good. Like even if you don't do them as good, it will look better. It fixes certain things which doesn't really develop the real skills within you, and that's why. Okay, I like when I see some good Procreate calligraphy or lettering, but I'm like, nah, I don't stand for this. I know, I mean, I don't have problem so much with technology. For example, there is VR calligraphy, which I tried, and this blew my mind because, you know, as calligraphers, we work in 2D. It's either on paper or wall, it doesn't matter, but it's always 2D. And in VR, I had for the first time opportunities to do calligraphy in 3D, which just blew my mind. And I'm really like supportive of VR calligraphy because it doesn't fix your strokes, but it gives you opportunities which you never had. And I think if you try VR, you will fall in love with it.
Well, Brody told me just a couple of weeks ago. He was here, and we were thinking of what next. And he shared the same experience that you did. He says like it's so amazing. You're standing in a room and you have this on, and then all these things happening. He said, you should come. And he said, I got the installation at home. You should come one day and you can play with it for a while. Yeah. So maybe I will do that.
That'd be super awesome. I mean, I would love to see some work from you or Brody done in VR. I mean, I think most people were not expecting you guys to do such things, and for me, it's such exciting thing just to hear about like Brody doing VR. This is like,
oh well, I mean, Brody is he is forever young, you know. I mean, you can throw him any bone you like. I mean, he will pick it up and he will bring it to excellence. Oh yeah, I mean, that's just one of his amazing talents, is that he always comes up with something new. You know, to me, he is the real artist among the calligraphers. I mean, artist in the full sense of the word, not just a skilled craftsman, but really thinking and anyway. But yeah, well, I disagree with you on I mean, Procreate for me also is very useful as a tool to try out some things, and it's like, is this combination going to work? And you just tap with your fingers. I said, no, it's not that, and then you start again. So it goes much faster, doesn't it?
Okay, yeah, like now depends how you look on it. Like the way you explain it. Okay, now then I hear you saying it. Okay, this makes sense. But you know, like I don't have such problem with Procreate. For me, the problem is if you are new to calligraphy, if you don't have skills, don't start with it. You know, because I see a lot of people, they just fall into calligraphy and they start with it. I guess this is the main problem, not so much
it's what they call modern calligraphy, isn't it? Yeah, you know, or I mean, I've always wondered about that word, modern calligraphy, because I thought that I was doing modern calligraphy, and then suddenly there were people showing like, you know, it's easy, you know, hand lettering, you know, and you do these same movements all over, and every E is the same and every A is the same. And I said, well, not to me. And then of course, if you do that with Procreate, right, and you put some special effects on it, it's easily done. So there I can understand you, that it's like fake,
cheating, maybe. I don't know.
A cheating thing, yeah. But yeah, well, what can I say? I mean, we had to learn it the hard way. And sometimes I think like, is it because we had to spend all those years refining our skills that we just can't stand it if somebody just does it with Procreate much faster than we possibly can?
I think your way, like the way you've taught, you learned calligraphy, it's much better. I don't think it's wrong. I think we lost the true ways of learning it. Like I've spoken a lot with Paul Antonio about this, and no matter how you look on it, calligraphy takes time, and especially if you want to become a good calligrapher, it takes time. There has not to be any shortcuts of it. I mean,
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I guess with our era that we're living with all this internet and everything going so fast, it kills the patience in people. And even though some people come into calligraphy, they want to learn it, but most of them, they're like, okay, I want to learn this now, fast, become good. And this is kind of, this is not how it's supposed to go.
No, although I think that some of these youngsters who taught it who learned it very rapidly, they sort of, at one point of time in their life, they will come in contact with the real deal, you know, and then they may say like, oh well, maybe I should take a workshop on Trajan capitals and try to brush them really the hard way instead of just picking them and just gluing them on my screen or so. So in a way, I mean, I would not discourage these people from doing modern calligraphy or going for some easy things, because some of them really see the light after a while, and they say, oh, well, there's much more you can do with it. And they see the difference between, let's say, the hand lettering thing, you know what I mean, the sort of thing that you have about 150 books now. And the thing that Sheila Waters is teaching. So there's a big difference between those. Yeah. And I talk with Brody a lot about that. Or we got to be careful also that there's a lot of calligraphy going on, I think, that is still under a layer of dust, I would say. So in my world, when I'm so glad that finally I get to see some youngsters, but when I go and teach in America, the average age is about 67.
Why is that? I think like a lot of young people are interested in calligraphy. And
yeah, well, you know, I mean, when you go to conferences and so on, so it's you say, wow. And they do the same things as they did already 20, 30, 40 years ago. So there's not much happening. Mm-hmm. And so that's when you said we need some young blood. We need a push to change things a bit, because I see that happening in Italy. I see young people in Italy. I see young people in Spain and so. But in other parts of the world, Canada, same thing. You know, older people. I mean, mostly females. I got classes where they're all female. I mean, I don't mind. You know, I don't mind at all. But you wonder sometimes, like, I mean, especially when you go to England. I mean, the good old English tradition, right? Yeah. There's something to say for that, but that's basically the same things that already were done 50 years ago.
I got the point. What you're talking about, and what do you think is the fix for this? How can this happen? Like, introduce to more young people and make them fall in love with this? Like,
well, that's hard to say. I mean, I'm an old man myself, you know, and I would.
Do you feel old?
Oh well, you know, I'm 62, so I'm almost retired. Right? Not that I will retire. I mean, not from what I'm doing right now, but to come back to your question, like, what are we going to do? Well, we should shake things up sometimes. Sometimes I feel that things are just looking too pretty, too nice, and that's probably because there's a lot of women involved in all that, you know, or maybe we're watching this the different Instagram accounts. I don't know, but sometimes I just go through these things and I said, well, I've seen that before. I've seen that before. I've seen that before. So show me something new. But I say the same thing to myself when I'm working at my desk. I said, well, you've done that before. I mean, you're doing this already for 15 years. So why don't you change it? And changes come, but in very small degrees. Sometimes I change the width of a G, for instance, or whatever.
There is, I think, you know, Philip Cislak. He's
no.
I think he attended one of your workshops. I don't know what is this workshop, but I don't even know how to explain. But basically, it was Latin letters that are mixed in a square shape, like something like Japanese or Chinese.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I mean?
And what's his name again? Say?
Philip Cislak. Wait, just a second. I'll show you. That's what's left in my mind is that you did this workshop. Let me check. Why? Okay, so it was by Brody actually. Huh.
Okay. Well then, yes, that explains. Yes.
But why
I
did I
mean,
have?
Brody.
I mean, I had in mind that it was by you.
No. I mean, Brody is teaching an online series now, and he is really breaking new grounds. And he's teaching how. I mean, that would be my answer to your question. Like, how can we shake things up, and how can we drag some people out of that swamp in which we all do the same things, and when we follow each other and we imitate each other. Well, Brody is your man. I mean, he can do all that. I mean, when he launched this year or past year, the first time, his online classes, and there were a lot of students, very talented students, who took this course, and I was so happy to see that, because I said, like, finally Brody is reaching a wide audience. Or he was already reaching a wide audience, but now in terms of, like, yeah, I mean, you can teach to the world when you go online, and he did amazing things. So that would be a way to indeed to change things, is to have some calligraphers with a vision, but there are very few of them. You know, I mean, most of the calligraphers I know, I included, we just teach the things that we love to do. And then we see that people are following us, and they said, like, oh, okay, that must have been one of my students, because it looks very much like what I was doing. And that's the way it goes. It's so difficult to shake off the influence of your teacher, right? You do what your teacher is doing.
You think this is a bad or a good thing? Because I've discussed the same thing with Paul Antonio. I keep mentioning Paul. It's because we have another separate podcast, which is only me and him talking about different things in calligraphy. Yeah, because I noticed, like, some people, I see some good work of young people and stuff, but when I see what they write, I know exactly who their teacher was. It's 100. Like, I'm like, okay, this is great that you do it at such level, but this is so much his teacher, and I have a mixed feelings about it.
Yeah, I think that's a phase you have to go through. You know, it's impossible not to be influenced. And I thought that for a while, I mean, years ago, I thought that I was developing something new by just mixing styles of all the teachers that I had. And I took a little bit of Gottfried Poll, and I took a bit of Brody, and a bit of this and a bit of that. And then I remember that when I was posting my work, that I got comments from my students and people I know, and they said, like, "Is this your work? I thought it was Brody's work." I mean, seriously, on one kind, I was happy. I said, like, oh my God.
It's like a compliment.
God, I can die now. But on the other hand, I sobered up, and I came down from my cloud, and I said, I don't want to go spend the rest of my life being a little Brody, or just one of his acolytes and imitators and whatever you call it. So I worked hard to develop an own style, and I can still see how much Brody is in me, and how much Elmo is in me, and so on. But I don't know. I mean, I'm quite aware that if people take my workshop, they will at first do some things that I will recognize as being my influence, but in time that will wear out, and some things will remain, and they take other workshops, and then to influence from there and influence from there. You have to agree with me, it takes a long time and a lot of work to develop an own style. Yeah, certainly in calligraphy. Right?
Yes, I mean, it's funny because when you started your story, you told me that, you know, you started because you wanted to have your own style and think. And it's funny because this is the exact same reason that I started calligraphy, because I was watching a video by Theo Swan. I hope you know Theo Swan, I guess. Or
who?
Theo Swan, Adam from Berlin.
No.
Scriptorium Berlin.
Oh, Scriptorium, I've heard of that. Yeah, I mean, actually, I think we're living somewhere in separate universes, right? So, I mean, I'm following calligraphy masters. I mean, you're the guy behind Calligraphy Masters.
Yes.
So I follow them, And I remember, but this is already some years ago, that there were a lot of people from calligraphy masters, and I was looking at all these names, and I said, "Damn!" I said, "They're very good, but how come I don't know them? I mean, and how come John Stevens is not there? Now he is.
Yes, he
Now
is.
now he is, but he wasn't there. I mean, he's only there since what, 5 years or so?"
Yeah. Well, calligraphy masters. Okay, let me explain a little bit because I don't know. I guess people like you don't. In the beginning, when I made calligraphy masters, there were a lot of people which were having problem with the name. They thought like, "Oh, who you are to call yourself calligraphy master?"
Yeah.
And
Okay. Yeah.
this is not at all the idea behind the name. Like there is a crew. I don't know if are you familiar with graffiti crews?
Hardly. No, I mean, I know Victor Kamps.
No, but yeah,
course.
my point is in graffiti, there are crews where there are like 2, 3, maybe sometimes a lot more people, but they have this graffiti crew and they have a name and they work together.
Yeah. All
With
right.
Calligraphy Masters, we decided to make a crew, which involves a lot of people from around the world, but we don't call ourselves masters and nobody thinks we're masters. The idea is to make people believe that everybody can become a master if they're dedicated, if they practice and all these things. It's mainly to inspire people. And yeah, for a long time, people have this wrong idea just because of this name. And I know it's a bit provocative a name, but after all, when I chose the name, it was already used because I bought the domain, you know, the website, and I'm not the first one who used this name. I just kept working with it.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, no. I mean, it was just that I didn't recognize any of the names, and I thought like, oh my God, I said like they should contact John and Julian and Brody and Dennis Brown and all these people. I mean, because these were the guys that I was brought up with. And I just saw a lot of people doing mostly tattoos. I don't know if I was right. A lot of tattoo I saw on the website and graffiti looking things. And I said, okay, well, this is a separate group. I said, well, that's very nice things in there. I said, but probably living in another universe.
No, it's not living in another. It's just I came introduced to calligraphy in a different way. I started with more not known to you people. And then with like in the beginning, I even didn't like traditional calligraphy. I was like, I didn't appreciate it. With that, it's been 8 years of calligraphy masters now. I've learned to know a lot. I learned to like the traditions in calligraphy, to appreciate masters like you and others. So it's a process, and this is the first year where I've planned to really push promoting people work, like stuff that is not known to younger generations, you know, because I think it's very important for young people to be learning from people like you, like John, like people who are masters and have traditions in themselves. And because of course it's good to develop your own style, but as you said earlier, at one point you gotta face the source.
So yes, so well, I'm you know, I forgot to say I'm very pleased and honored to be invited by Calligraphy Masters. It was just weird for me, and I said, I remember thinking at the time when I discovered the Instagram account of Calligraphy Masters, and I said, oh my God, I mean, how come I've never heard of these people? I mean, I have some magazines like Letter Arts Review, and you always get to see the same names, and I probably know them all by now. And then there was an entire new world. I said, all these young people there. And I thought they were only ladies of about 60, 70 years old doing calligraphy, but now look at these young guys. They're all out there. It just suddenly, I just didn't get to see them somehow. Anyway.
You know, I must say it feels really nice to hear something like this from you, because as I said, a lot of people older and have more traditions in them. In the beginning, they were very against calligraphy masters, I guess because of the name and some other reasons. For example, Dennis Brown, he didn't want me to feature his work. He didn't want to associate his work with the work I was featuring. And it's really nice to hear like people like you that actually like that, they didn't have a problem. I spoke with John also, and he's also the same. And it's really cool to see like masters like you, which are not like just pushing away the new and somehow, okay, I know not the work of everyone is so good as yours, but you still appreciate it, you know, and this is super cool for me. And I think it's really important I've done this just to unite the people around calligraphy and to keep calligraphy alive, you know, because it's a century which goes more and more about technology. And I mean, calligraphy is...
I mean, it's, you know, we're responsible for that to some degree, you know. I mean, the group that I'm part of is, as I explained. So if we keep going on the way we're going on, I suppose when our generation dies, then it's done. It's over and done with, because we, as I said, we keep just walking in the same circle, you know, feeding upon each other, and sort of incestuous things going on in our world, like okay, well, I took a lesson with him, and now I'm doing this and doing that, and then people, and as I said, we need something new to, and it's especially nice to see with Instagram and with all the technology that you see. Well, there's a lot of youngsters, maybe not in my world, not in Belgium or the States, but out there in the big world, that there are a lot of young people doing that.
Like, I asked about you, Swan. I thought, like, I don't know, I just thought you know them, but I'm gonna ask about another name, because John Stevens knew this other name. It's funny for me because you're like this kind of person that likes this expression kind of calligraphy. So do you know Pokras Lampas?
Yes, the Russian guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think about his work? I'm really curious.
Well, as I said, there was another name that just was thrown in, and that I got to see through calligraphy masters, I guess. And then when I was in Russia a couple of years ago, some of my students talked about him. Well, it's amazing. I mean, he reminds me of another guy, Said Dawkins. You know, Dawkins.
He's also in the crew.
Would you say that it's a bit similar things? You know, I mean, they're working on big projects and textures mostly, and I mean, I should have another look at Pokras Lampas' work. It's been a while now. That sort of work, which is spectacular in a way that, my God, I mean, just the scale of their work, just to start with. And it's so not me. I mean, I would not even consider doing anything like that. I would make a total mess of it, right? And because I'm just a, well, how will I say, you know, I mean, look, this is my studio, as you see here. So this is where I work. How am I supposed to do things like Pokras Lampas on in a place like that?
No,
right?
I don't mean like you doing stuff on buildings or things like this. I'm just curious, what do you think about his style? And, you know, because it's not like really traditional calligraphy. He developed also this mixture of his expression, and I'm just curious overall, when you look to his work, what's your thoughts about?
Well, it's a dangerous thing for me to say something. I mean, I really should have another look at his work, you know, because I'm not that familiar with him. So I'd rather not comment now and say something stupid, because I'm known for that.
Okay, first, this is the one that I thought you thought Philip, but
okay, yeah,
that's what I was talking about. And
this is this is something that wrote. Oh well, this is his work. So he took courses with John Stevens, no doubt.
Okay,
there's a lot of things going on. It is all his work.
Yes, this is the Philip, but here is Pokras' latest works. Okay, this is from last year, his main projects. Let's see.
Yeah, well, look at that. Yeah.
This is just, I don't know.
Yeah, it's spectacular, isn't it? Yeah.
For me, what I love in his work is this, it's such a unique thing, and the way he mixes letters and all those details are just spectacular.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I was amazed when I saw his work, and I said, he's such a young guy.
Yes.
Already. I mean, how? It's not fair.
I feel the same about Pokras, because he's even younger than me. Like, okay, I learned with the time. I mean, it's been already 8 years. I'm fine. I'm just happy to know that he exists and creates such beauty, because he's one of the biggest influences for me. I really love his work.
I'm sure he is. Yes.
But let's talk about this gestural, right? You keep calling it writing. Could it be called also calligraphy, or?
Oh, well.
I mean,
Yeah,
explain a little bit to me and maybe people who don't know what gestural calligraphy writing is. What are the tools that are used, and how someone can get involved with something like this?
Well, as I said, it was at the very start of my calligraphy doings that I met Elmo van Slingerland, and I was still at the time trying to master formal italic. And he came and he just took a speedball nib, and his letters had so much freedom. They were so alive, and it looked so easy to do. I mean, I was struggling with the formal lettering and then say like, oh my God, I went too wide, I went too small, I went to this and to that. And this guy, he just wrote like that. And I thought like, oh, just give me 2 weeks and I can do that. It looks so much easier. It took me a lot of years actually. And that's the nice thing that I like about calligraphy, that it can, you know, there's that Italian word, you may have heard of it, sprezzatura, and it means studied nonchalance. So it looks very nonchalant, it looks like it's a piece of cake. It is so well done. It's what Rembrandt did in his paintings, you know. You said like, wow, look at that. And then you see the skill, but you have to hide the skill. You have to hide it. So, and a lot of calligraphy, I think, especially from beginners, you can still smell the sweat that it took to make the work. And already, I mean, the ancient Romans already agreed on that. They said like, the real art is when you can hide that it actually took you a lot of time and sweat and effort to do so. I've always believed that. And when this guy did his demo, I said, this is exactly what I was looking for. I mean, just to make it look like it's spontaneous, and yet he talked about details. He said like, did you see that I just drag that line a little bit further, because if it would stop here, it would look like I did it on purpose. And you just fake, you can fake speed, you can fake spontaneity, but you have to do it well, because if you, and that's the problem a bit, if you're not good at it, some people will not see it, but those who are in the know, those who do gestural writing, they can immediately spot when somebody is just pretending.
Okay.
And that's because gestural writing cannot be mistaken for mark making. It's not mark making that I'm doing. So I'm very thoughtful about the things I'm doing. So that's why the book I wrote on gestural writing, I called it Thoughtful Gestures, because it's not like, oh, we just swimming around and then we call it art because I just comes from my belly onto the paper. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I said it can come from your belly, but it has to pass through your mind before you actually throw it on the paper. And whereas a lot of formal calligraphy is a lot of skill involved in the way, like we have everything under control and everything is nicely between two lines and all that. I can appreciate that, like I can appreciate Spencerian, but it can be too neat for me, too precious, too beautiful, too exact. I want to see some life, I want to see some movement. And in gestural writing, that's exactly what you get. You get movement. You get that idea of dynamic. It's like you're looking at the thing and you said, wow, look, this, whereas a lot of formal calligraphy is static, right? It's well done, but it's static. And I thought it would make a good mix also with abstract things. See, you could make a similar, you could say like, well, you have drawn to life paintings when everything is very exact, when you make a very beautiful flower and you will look at the flower and you say like, wow, it's like a picture, it's well done. But you could also give an impression of that flower by just making sure that, yeah, well, that you make a few drops on the right place and the right shape. And that's what attracts me more. Also, that's why I'm attracted to abstract art, and I'm also attracted to abstract calligraphy, when things are not legible anymore, but you can just enjoy the lines and the composition And
are there some specific script that you use for gestural calligraphy, or there
well,
I don't know, your own letters that you do for them?
No, I mostly start from italic. So when I teach the gestural lettering, I tell my students now, we first going to start with a foundation of formal italic. And then we switch from, or let's say we transition from formal italic, we speed up a bit, we change the things, we change the slope, we change the size, we change the rhythm, we change the way we make our ascenders and descenders. And first of all, we do that very slowly, and you see how these things are changing. And then after a while I said, okay, and now we're going to see the difference between when you do all these changes very slowly and you squeeze some letters and you stretch some letters and you put them a bit higher and lower and you play with the slope and all that, you can do that while still staying fully in control of what you're doing, right? You just go a bit slower. And then I said, okay, now we fake speed in a way, because if you speed up your italic, your letters will bounce and some parts will not be exactly the same. And you can do that. You can fake speed, but you can also actually go faster. And that's where you see when, instead of making a G, for instance, like that, very slowly, you can do that. And you can say, okay, I got my G, but you could also make a G like that. And people will notice. You immediately notice the difference between something in which you said like, oh, or you do it with, and that takes a bit of training. So it took me a lot of training just to really throw down my lines with accuracy and thoughtfulness and exactly the way I want them. But the most important thing in gestural writing is the design, of course. Okay. Not only in gestural writing, it's the design that counts. So if I'm going to write the name of a person, for instance, I can do about 1 million things with that name. I can stretch any letter, I can make it taller, higher, and all that. But I have to make decisions. How will I connect my letters with each other? What will I do with the slope? Will I keep it constant or will I change my slope? What will I do with the size of the letters, with the rhythm of the letters? And all these things, if you don't do them well, people can see that you're just faking, that you're just pretending, that you say like, well, he told me that I should do this and I should do that, but you gotta have the feeling for it. You have to develop the feeling for it. And that only comes with lots of practice, which is never a nice message to tell your students. Like, I mean, I can't really say like, and by the end of the 6 weeks, you'll be able to do exactly what I am doing. No, it doesn't work like that. I can explain the mechanics. I can explain what lies underneath. But as we agreed already on that, it just takes time to become good at it.
Could it be done with different tools, different pens?
Yes.
And also, what's your favorite to do gesture?
That's a very good question. Well, I mean, for a long time, my favorite tools were the speedball nibs. And why was that? Because when Elmo demonstrated his gestural writing, he took a speedball nib. And so I came home, I said, if it's a speedball nib that it takes, then okay, I'll do it with speedball nibs. And I practiced for years with speedball nibs, but you could also use a pencil if you want to, or just something like this, right? But my favorite tool is, by all means, this ESA pen. Have you ever heard of the ESA pen?
I actually just spoke with Alan today. I invited him to the podcast. Yes.
Aha. Oh, well, that's good. I mean, that guy is a miracle. He introduced me to his ESA pens. Well, what is it? 3-4 years ago, perhaps already. And when I was in Chicago, and he was among my students, and we were doing gestural writing actually. And he said, oh, you know, I've got this here, and he was doing something with that. And I said, no, I said, use a speedball nib. You know, I mean, everybody uses speedball nibs. Why would you use anything like that? You know, it's like, and I tried it for a second, and I said, no. just take a speedball nib. And then during a break, he came, he said like, I would love you to try that a little bit more. And so I did. And then suddenly I saw the light. And I said, forget what I said about speedball nibs, please. Forgive me. Oh, forgive me. And since then, I mean, he's been perfecting these things. It was already perfect from the start. I keep saying to him, I said, like, there's no, I mean, why would, but Alan is Alan. He just loves to experiment. And he said, I made it a little bit more flexible here, and now I can do this, and now I can do that. And I'm going to send you a few more. So I got about 20 of these now that he sent to me. So wow. I mean, I'm good for the rest of my life. And I said, this is pure magic. So everywhere I go, everybody I meet, I just say like, this is the thing, you need this, all right? So if you ask me for my favorite tool, the one that I said my wife she should bury me with, well, it's one of these, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even Brody himself, he says like, these are very good, much more flexible than the hand rhythmic things that he, I mean, these are wonderful also. I mean, you got these splashes, right? I think I can be more refined with that, and they're very trustworthy. I mean, I got here about a dozen of these cola pens and what have you, these
ruling pens.
Ruling pens. I mean, I got a whole set of each, and people give them to me or I buy them or whatever. And each time when I try them out, I said, I make a stroke and nothing comes with me. Whereas these, I can trust them. I mean, whatever I do, it's always there. And I have to thank Alan for that. Yeah. So send him my regards. I mean, he's
sure.
a wonderful guy. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier your book about gesture writing. Mm-hmm. If somebody gets this book, can they learn doing it just by the book?
No, not really, I think. I mean, no. Well, I mean, to start with, I wrote that book, what is it now, 12 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So that was a brave thing for me to do, to write a book. That was my very first book. And somehow it sold out very fast. So people can still buy the book now, but in a digital way. I mean, I still have the files, so I can send them the files. But no, it's not the sort of book that you could say, it's not a manual, although I explain things, but you have to see it. You have to see it, somebody doing actually, and I'll explain. But if somebody would be interested in that sort of writing, the online class actually is a thing that I put a lot of work in, and so it goes for 6-7 weeks, and then we go through all the stages in which I explain in video material, in detail. Mm-hmm. What to do, how to hold your nib, and how to manipulate, and my thoughts and philosophy on it and everything else. So that would be the way to, I mean, if you're really interested in that, then I would say.
But where can people find first the book and then the classes? Is everything on your website?
Oh, the book is on my website. Mm-hmm. The book is on my website. And the classes, well, you know, I just taught, a couple of months ago, I taught the gestural class. I mean, I'm teaching for the Acon Arts website. So that's a good friend of mine who has a platform in which he offers all sorts of online courses. And so I'm doing it with her. I mean, she takes care of all the technical side. I just made the videos, and I guide people, I coach people. We have a forum. I try to be of assistance. But I said to her last year, I said, this is the last time I'm going to do this. Because I've taught it already a couple of times. And I said, after that, it's going to be time for something new. So we'll have to find, if some people are still interested, I'll find a way to, what I'm going to do. Maybe I can sell the videos or whatever. I'm not sure what I'm doing. But I said, it's a bit ridiculous what I said to her. You know, she said, are you really going to do this? I said, yeah, you know, I mean, so now, I mean, next week I'm going to teach Trajans for the 4th time already. And I said, this has to stop. I can't do this forever. People say, oh, well, again and again. So I was very happy to do that. I mean, I really enjoy teaching online. I still do. I enjoy every minute of it. But I just thought like, well, there's time for something else now because I want to make more work for myself. I want to do something else, maybe a big exhibit or something else, or maybe come up with another class. I don't know.
So how many classes are you teaching? I thought you were doing just gestural calligraphy. You mentioned now
No,
Trojans as
no.
well.
Actually, in the online classes, I developed 4 online classes. So one on trace and capitals, one on gestural writing with a nib, and then one on build-up capitals, and then one on the the pointed brush.
Mm-hmm.
But the pointed brush has a lot. Is pretty. It's not the same, of course, but there's also a lot of gestural writing getting into the pointed brush, because I'm not teaching the pointed brush in a sort of a formal or in a sort of a modern calligraphy way,
Mm-hmm.
but more in, well, you know my work, more gestural, more
Yes.
surprising perhaps.
Throughout your journey, can you mention few books that helped you, or you were mostly influenced by classes and workshops that you've attended? Were there any books that ever helped you with?
Well, again, I mean, there are a few books that were very important to me, and but also given the time of period that I was reading them, then I said like, oh well, this is very important. This is very nice for me. And but you move on after a while, right? And then you said like, oh well, that was important, but not to me anymore. I've passed that stage, or I'm not interested in that sort of writing anymore. Well, yeah, first of all, I should mention the Bible, which is John Stevens' scribe.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, well, you gotta have that. That's the Bible to me. What was very important to me is also a book that Brody, that collects Brody's work that he did for muurkranten. So there was, I don't know whether it's available all over the world. I don't think so, but it has a. Should I pick it up and show?
Sure, if you have it, why not?
Okay, let me see. So that's the book here. And what he did is, that was one of the very first things that he did when he came in Bruges. He had to, can you see that?
Oh,
or
yes.
mirror script? Okay, no.
Huh.
And so you see all these different kinds of writing. So my God.
Whoa.
And so I thought that was spectacular. So that was a huge influence for me. There's gestural writing, there's formal writing, there's writing with all sorts of nibs and pens and whatnot. So it still is a source of inspiration to me. He goes on and on. And actually that is something that he is not very proud of, that he did. I mean, he said, never mention that again to me.
What? So this book is by Brody?
This book is by Brody. This is one of the very first things. So it's a collection of things that he did over the years for.
But it's
for
not available for.
I don't know. Well,
Wow.
You know, muurkranten. What I could do, if you say like I'm interested in that, I could say where you can have it, because we still have a shop here in Bruges in which they sell these books.
I'm definitely interested now.
Yeah,
I just looking through all those pages, I'm like, wow.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever seen Brody's website?
No, and actually, because I'm not sure, because I contacted a lot of people last few days for the podcast. I'm not sure if I wrote him, but you mentioned so many times his name. You said you're friends. Would you be able to assist to get him on the podcast and share his journey?
I think he would love to do that. I'm not sure. He hasn't responded yet to your request.
I'm just not sure if I wrote him. Now, after we finish the podcast, I'll double check. If I haven't, I'll write him. But yeah, it's always good if I have like some word from.
He's got. I mean, he's the man you should talk to. I mean, he's the future of calligraphy. He's the past of calligraphy. He's everything.
Now,
especially to me. I mean, just watch his website. Go to Brody Neunschwander, see his website, and guy's amazing. Yeah, sometimes I lie awake at night and I said, "Oh my God, he is so good." How can I ever? So, well, there's of course this book, and there's the book also by Thomas Ingmeier, Words of Risk. that was important to me. There's John Stevens. As I said, I got a lot of books in which they sort of feature work of different people. Gottfried Potts also was important to me at some point of time. Schrift, Klang, Bild, I think his work was, or the title of the book was. I mean, at the beginning, I was into formal calligraphy, of course, because I mean that was the things that were then popular. So English books on how to write, and Calligraphy Masterclass was one of my very first books. I remember that. That was also influential.
I guess those names are enough,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
We don't need a huge list. Is there a tip or advice that you remember that was given from some of your teachers or anyone that helped you the most with your calligraphy journey?
Yeah. Well, I remember I was only doing calligraphy for what, 2 or 3 years, and I took a workshop with Ewan Clayton. And at the end of the workshop, I mean, it was a week-long workshop, and I worked like hell. I really tried to take the most out of this class. And at the end of the week, we had to put out our works on the tables, and he made his round, and he said all sorts of nice things about the works of other people. And then when he came at my table, I was about to die. Like, oh my God, what is he going to say about my work? And he looked at it, and he just turned around and looked at everybody, and he said, sometimes you might think that you will make a lot of progress in one night or so, but that's not the case. He said you have to work hard and hard and hard. And I remember that exactly that night, I had worked all night long to get a proper result on the table. And he said that, and I said, okay, message taken. I should not fool myself into thinking that I could suddenly make a huge leap forwards because of one night. And so I got the message all right. I mean, I confronted him years later. I mean, I met him again, and we became very good friends. And I said, can you still remember the first time when we saw, and I was in your class, and you told me that? And he said, oh my God, I said, did I really say that? I said, yeah, well, I mean, that's what teachers do, I mean, the student remembers, but the teacher forgets. He just says like, okay, well, what next? And I said, but you were so right, because at the time I really thought that I was just full speed ahead, and we're going to see. So takes time. We have a saying here in Flanders. We say grass doesn't grow by pulling at it, right? That's a nice one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very nice one.
And I was pulling at the grass with all my might. Okay, so that might be a good advice.
Yeah, I guess this is a great one.
And another advice, I mean, the older you get, the wiser you become, I think, is not to force things. So it's about the same as I just said. It's just maybe I should go in the direction that feels like me, rather than to try to become somebody else. Or I mean, as a calligrapher, as all calligraphers, we get exposed to lots of things, right? And we say, oh, I want to do that. This looks so nice. I want to do this. I want to do that. And that's how we get our classes filled with students, of course, because they said, oh, I want to have a taste of that. And but after a while, you get to distinguish what really interests you, and what you say, like, well, lots of people are doing that, but I don't really care for that. And maybe you just drop this and say, like, life's too short to be able to know it all and to master it all.
Are there any youngsters which are doing what you love doing, gestural calligraphy writing, which they made impression on you and you think they'll become something?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the nice things about teaching online is, and I guess also for the students themselves, that they can learn from me in a way that they don't have to travel, and which is far less expensive than if they would have to go, I don't know where. So I had over the years a couple of people in my class that I said, like, oh my God, look at that. Well, of course, I mean, I mentioned Victor Kamps. I mean, he was my student. He's been in my class, but I can't really say he was my student. I mean, he was already fabulous when he just did the honor of being in my class, right? In Italy, there's Gisela Biondani that does wonderful work also with watercolor. It's always dangerous to. I mean, there's Giuliano Bocchi. May heard of him, Giuliano.
Yes.
Of course, I mean, again, like Victor, he was once in my class, but he was already a master long before that. He's kind enough to say that I influenced him. Well, if I have, I'm very happy for that. He does wonderful work. Oh, really? I mean, I should go on Instagram now because there's
Oh, I'll check your Instagram. You know, it's no, you don't need to press yourself. Like if some names pop up, that's more than enough.
Yeah.
You know. And
yeah, there's sure there's more than that. You know, there's I don't know whether these names say anything to you. Sigrid Argmann from Germany. No, doesn't ring a bell.
no. After we finish, I'll check who you're following. I'll really check what people are you following.
Okay. Yeah, I know there's definitely some people out there that I should follow, but that I haven't discovered yet. I know, but
well, it is what it is.
You cannot overfeed your Instagram account otherwise.
Yeah, that's kind of true. Yves, I'm super grateful and I'm super happy for this conversation. It was super fun and interesting to me to listen to your story.
It was very nice to meet you. I mean, I remember.
Okay. Is there something that I haven't asked you about your journey, on your story, that you wanted to share with people, or I don't know, or if there is something that you want to say to people, just go for it.
Well, maybe I should just say that when people ask me, say like, what are you doing now as a full-time calligrapher? I said, well, most of it actually, I'm earning my living by teaching, and I've always loved teaching. I mean, before I did calligraphy, I was a teacher, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, I could say I continued the nice job of teaching without actually having to go to school and grade papers and go to meetings and talk to their parents and all that sort of thing that comes with regular teaching. So I have the best of both worlds. I can teach what I like, and I don't have to talk to the parents afterwards and say like, well, Milan is not doing all that well, you know. So I'm really happy that I made that choice 12 years ago and just quit school and never turned back. And that was a major turn of careers, right? Because remember, I had that awful handwriting that my students couldn't read. And I remember the day that I told my students that I would stop teaching Latin and that I would become a professional calligrapher. They looked at me in amazement and said like, oh my God, is this guy going to be a calligrapher? Then I'm going to be an astronaut. Anything is possible if he can become a calligrapher. Yeah, I had a wonderful life. Well, I have a wonderful life, yes.
Yes, don't say it like this.
Yes. Yeah, but sometimes I look back and I said like, oh, well, who would have thought that 35 years ago when I made my first letters, it will all come to this? I had no idea. So I'm just very grateful for everything it brought me, especially the contacts I had and the travels I could do. And I met a lot of people and I met practically all of my heroes. It's wonderful. You won't hear me complain. As I said, I'm a teacher, so this is basically what I'm doing, and I'm very proud and very happy with the online classes that I've been teaching. They've been very successful. I mean, to my amazement, because I thought that, well, online teaching, for a long time I thought that I had to sit right next to the person and just see what he's doing and holding his or her hand and said like, oh, maybe like this. But actually, you can learn how to brush Trojans from a distance. Can you believe that? Yeah.
I'll make sure to put some links to your website, to the book, and as well, I'll ask you later to give me some links for the classes so I can put them under
Okay,
this
well,
video?
yeah, I mean, yes. Well, you know, I'm going to send you a message with some information and things that you might want to use. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for that. I mean,
So before we finish, I just remember because you finished speaking about the classes, and earlier you mentioned you might sell those classes. What does that mean? Because if you're selling those videos or something, I might be interesting to
well,
get them for calligraphy masters, you know.
yeah, well, you know, I mean, we haven't decided yet. It's just, it would be a shame to throw them away, right?
Yes, exactly.
Because I put a lot of time and then just try to make them as beautiful and as good as possible. Well, I told my student, I told everybody, I said, like, this is going to be the last time. You know, it sounds like the farewell tour of a pop group. And then the year after that, they say like, no, this is going to be the last time, or this is the comeback tour. And I said, I can't do that. You know, I mean, people would not take me serious. They would say like, oh, and we signed up because he told us that would be the last time we would be able to do that. And now he's just saying like, oh, well, here I am again. So, but I know that there are some people who might be disappointed in not having taken the class or not having the opportunity to take the class. And then maybe I should try to think of another way to put them online or so, or for sale or whatever, but haven't decided on that yet.
If you decide something, feel free to contact me because I would
Okay,
love to
yeah, well,
preserve that.
I mean, we can then use all the promotion we can have. Yes, that would be wonderful. I just saw you today by chance on Goodreads. You're on Goodreads. Did you know
Well,
that? Right, of course you
yes,
know.
of course
Yeah.
I know.
And I just posted something on Goodreads and I suddenly said like, well, this is the guy I'm going to talk to now. And you said that you're planning to read a book on fracture.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
I'm interested,
So
like,
I'm following you at least on Goodreads.
that's great.
Good.
Like that's funny now that you're saying it, I'm like, okay, I haven't touched my Goodreads in a long time, and yesterday I saw a guy who bought the book and I've seen this book before, so I was like, okay, now I have to get the book for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Because for me, my biggest love, like the thing I started for, it was fracture.
It was fracture.
I fell in love with calligraphy because of fracture. And
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, I gave it a go. You know, when you're talking fracture, then you probably know Torsten Kolle.
no, I don't.
No?
No.
Well, you should check him out.
Okay.
I don't think he's on Instagram, but he has a website. You know, I'm just going to Torsten K-O-L-L.
Maybe you can send it together with some other information.
I'll send it to
You
you if I
know?
don't forget. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be
Good.
great. So thank you for being the guest on the podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. Feel free to drop some comment or questions to Yves. If you're interested in his classes, let me know, whatever. Like, share, enjoy. Thank you for watching. And as always, keep writing.
Okay, certainly do that. Bye-bye.
Before I finish this podcast, I want to say a few things. First of all, I hope you enjoyed it and it was as fun as it was for me recording it. Thank you all for the huge support on the podcast episodes. It's super nice to see the new channel building up. But I want to ask you something, guys. Please, whenever you listen to a podcast on YouTube, like the video and drop a comment. I see a lot of you sharing stories on Instagram and commenting there, but there are no comments on the episodes themselves. So please do that. It will be much appreciated. We're trying to hit the 1K mark for the Calligraphy Masters podcast channel. Thank you for watching and listening, and keep writing.